You are a voice to your community, nation, and world. This is the Global Call.
Hi, my name is Vanessa. I'm from Seattle, Washington. I'm a pediatric nurse at a children's hospital, and I love working with children. I love working with desperate families, destitute families, and I love nations. Any nation, I love them. I love the children of the nations, and I love to travel. So if you're ever in Seattle, come visit me.
Hi, I'm Evangeline Weiner, your host for Global Call, and we're here today with another wonderful guest, Vanessa Larkin. Welcome, Vanessa.
Thank you.
And we're going to hear in a minute a video from Kyle Larkin, which is Vanessa's brother, and kind of his story about his life, what he's gone through. And then we're going to talk to Vanessa kind of about the perspective of having a family member, that you worry about and that has had addictions, and sort of what it does to family, and kind of just ask her specific questions. So welcome, Vanessa, and we're excited to hear Kyle's story, and we're going to watch that right now.
The only guy in the house. I never had a father. Never knew my father. Grew up and so my childhood was a little different. My mom had a roommate, and discipline was definitely a part of my family, and strictly enforced. So I grew up, my childhood spent a lot of time in trouble with my family, felt isolated, insecure, just kind of like the oddball of the family. So when I turned 17, I had made a decision that I was going to move out. So I moved out when I was 17 and started living with friends and living with friends' families, and just moving from place to place. Lived with some family members, trying to, I guess, kind of find myself. Because everything that I was taught growing up just wasn't real to me. I wanted to find it out for myself. And so when I turned 18, the first thing I went and did was bought a pack of cigarettes, because I just wanted to smoke. I just wanted to see what it was like. And so I began smoking cigarettes. Well, after high school and hanging out with different crowds, I started to get into drugs. When I was 18 years old, I started to smoke pot, and I smoked pot for a while, and then got really into it and started to manufacture it and sell it, and just hanging out with the wrong crowds, which led to even more drugs, which led to drinking. And then there was events that happened in my life where I was hurt by people, and I didn't know how to deal with it, and I became bitter and angry and hurt, very hurt. And so my medication was obviously the things that I talked about earlier, the drugs and the alcohol. So that's how I medicated myself for years. And then there came a point where I didn't want to do drugs anymore, and so I tried to quit doing the drugs. But then I just drank, and I drank all the time, because I was depressed and I didn't know how to deal with it. And so that was the way that I dealt with it, was just by drinking. And so from the age of 21 to I'd say 27, I was a heavy drinker. And but then I got in trouble with the law because of drinking and ended up in jail 2 times for driving while intoxicated. And I ended up, the court ended up handing me a deal where if I went to 2 years of alcohol and drug classes and paid a certain amount of fines, then they'd wipe it off my record. And so I took the deal, and so then I went to 2 years of drug and alcohol classes, still continuing to drink during this time. I remember one night I came home from work, and I was cooking dinner, and I just felt this intense fear come over me, over my health situation. I just felt like, I really felt like I was dying, and it's really hard to explain, but I was scared, I was frightened, and I remember trying to call people, trying to call my sister and my mom, and they weren't answering the phone, and this made me paranoid and anxious, and I didn't know what to do. And I remember just sitting on my couch and like bent over, just not even able to look up at the sky, look up at God, because I just felt so ashamed of who I was and what I had done in my lifetime. I remember sleeping that night, sleeping good, and waking up in the morning, and I was just exhausted. I was just exhausted. I had never felt that exhausted, and but I felt this peace about me, and something I'd never felt before. And I remember, because I had made it a habit to get up early and read my Bible and pray. I'd read my Bible for an hour and I'd pray for an hour, and I remember getting up and praying. And the prayers just seemed so powerful. And there was just something different about these prayers, and I could really feel them coming from me. I could really feel them coming from my heart. It was something that I never experienced before. Even as a child, praying, like I'd never experienced this, and I knew there was something real with this. It doesn't really involve me. It doesn't involve. It involves me, but it isn't all about me. Life is about people and relationships. It's about knowing that there is a living God out there. That loves you, that loved me, and He's totally restored my life, and He's brought me into a place where I have a new chance at life. I have a new beginning, and I believe that's for everybody.
And we're back, and as you just saw Kyle's story, and isn't it amazing to see the redemptive, someone's life redeemed of his story from growing up, and even the different addictions and different situations he went through. And I know you went through a lot of those with him, and even just feeling having to worry about someone you love, and what is that like to have someone that you love and having to worry about them?
Yeah, it's something you kind of think you understand when you hear someone talk about it, but when you're living it, it's like a constant. When the phone rings, when he calls, oh, what is he going to say this time? I remember he called me one time and he said, Vanessa, I totaled the car you just gave me. I thought, let me bless my brother, let me give him a new car. It wasn't a really nice car, but it was a new car. And I remember when he called me and he felt so shamed and he felt so embarrassed, but he told me, I was driving drunk. I wrecked the car and I'm in jail. And when you hear those things every time the phone rings, when he would call, you kind of have that feeling like, I hope it's not that he's dead or that he overdosed or that he's in the hospital. Because when you have someone that's addicted to drugs like that, you just never know when the phone rings what that's going to come, or what kind of things you need to be prepared for. So I think it's a constant state of it is worry. Even if you're a peaceful person, it's worry.
Absolutely. Yeah, and did you feel like you had to fix him, or? Yeah,
we were some typical children. He was the bad boy in our family, and I just tried to do anything to please my mom, please my family, and for him it was hard because when you see someone making wrong choices and you see them going time and time and time again to things that are so hurtful to themselves and to the family, it's hard not to want to just grab them and shake them by the head and say, hey, what are you doing with your life? You're ruining it. And there's so much that you can do, and you have so much talent. My brother is so talented, and to see him squander that for drugs and for alcohol and for women was heartbreaking. And I felt so like my voice could never be heard to him. When you pound the door on that loved one so many times, they slam it shut in your face and you can't get in again. And that's when we really had our breaking point. That's when my brother was at his all-time low. My mom and I were frustrated. We didn't know what to do, and it was really hard. We just felt like it was a wall you couldn't speak through.
Yeah, like the only choice was to step back and allow him to give him that freedom to be who he was. Right. And hey, if you're going to make these decisions, we can't enable you to make them. And we have to step back and say, hey, we love you, but we can't do anything about it.
Yeah, and I don't think my brother had an opportunity on the video to share. He was in jail, and my mom was like, he called my mom. My mom's like, not again. I'm not coming to get you out again. When you have a loved one that makes repeated mistakes like that, sometimes getting them out is the worst thing you can do because they're just going to run back to it. My mom said, no, I can't. And my brother prayed to God that night. He said, God, if you get me out of this, if you get me out of jail, I will not do this again. Wow. And literally the next day, Evangeline, my brother had a random person come down and bail him out of jail. And it was the beginning of him realizing that God is gonna be the one to redeem you. And even as a person, as a family member, you want to be the redemptive one sometimes. Yeah. You want to be the one that rescues them and says, they call, they need money, they need a shelter, they need food, and you want to be the one that says, I'm here for you. Absolutely. But there comes a point when you can't do that anymore. Yeah. And my mom and I met that point. We were on vacation with my brother, and he was withdrawing from alcohol, withdrawing from drugs, and we were all fighting. Yeah. and I said, Mom, we can't do this anymore. We can't try to fix him. We've got to go to God. We got to pray, and we got to believe. And we wandered into a church, just a random church, and God so knows where you need to be that even when you wander into a church, He knows what church that is. He knows what place that is, and He will meet you. And my mom and I did that, and they just happened to be a church starting 21 days of prayer and fasting, and I was like, I don't even know what that means, but Mom, let's do this. Let's believe for Kyle. And so my mom and I made a commitment. We're not going to tell Kyle what to do. We're not going to tell him what's right, what the right choices. We're going to pray. Yeah. And we're going to believe that prayer is going to be the one that breaks through for him.
Well, was there a particular situation, or was it the jail situation, that you felt that finally you had to stop? Getting on to him to see him really change?
Well, to be honest, Evangeline, I do pray, and I ask God what to do. And your mind tells you what to do all the time. Hey, do this, this is wise. You have psychology telling you what to do. And I remember God spoke to me one day, and He said, Vanessa, you can't fix him. You can't change him, but you can pray, and you can believe me to be the one to fix him. And I felt like the Lord says, you can't break through doors that He's shut off to you, but I can go through those doors. And awesome. It was in that place truly where I felt the presence of God to just be released from, trying to control him, be released from trying to be the one that was his Savior, and let God really reach him. So
yeah, and you can love him and be there, but you can't enable him. It's two different things.
Totally.
And I remember even even a story about Vanessa, about my cousin, even when she was going through addiction and drugs and these different situations of even there, it came a point where, you know, she was in her house, and she would share this if she was here, but she was in her house, and you met my cousin actually too, but she was in her house, and she had allowed this guy that was homeless or something to sleep in their house, and they had no kind of relationship, but she, you know, was so cracked out or whatever that she allowed him to come inside. And you know, she then her mom saw him in her room and freaked out and was like, "What? Who is this person? This is like some random guy, you know, or some random Joe," and you know, as we like to call him, random Joe. No, but you know, and so her mom said he has to get out right now, and you know, she freaked out and, you know, pushed her mom, and so in a way assaulted her mom, and her mom called the police, and they came, and my cousin had already taken off. But you know, the thing is the police told her, they said, "You must stop enabling her. You are enabling her to be on drugs. You're enabling her to act this way, not to grow up. And until your support is not there anymore, until, you know, they know that you love them, but until you quit enabling her, she's not going to ever change, because she always has this to fall back on." And you know, at that point really is when she started getting her life right. You know, when she went to rehab, when she began to figure it out. Okay, maybe I need a higher power. Maybe there's a higher power that is truth out there that can help me get set free, that can help me, you know, get out of this situation.
Right.
And so at that point, then, you know, she went to rehab, she got set free, she came to know God, and, you know, began to see her life changed. And today her life is really, it's still a process, but it's a redemptive, you know, purpose of that God saw that situation and took it. And really, it's true about the enabling thing that, you know, if they always know something will be there, or a crutch will be there for them, it's harder, for sure.
And you have to, I feel like you have to change the "I will be there for you for everything you need" to the "I will be there for you because I love you, but I won't be there for you in the way that you think that you need." And I think that's huge, because Kyle always knew that my mom and we loved him, and like, I really know that. I really know he knew we loved him, and we would always be there for him, but we were not going to help him stay in that place anymore. And so we just kind of cut off all like assistance, any money, any help, anything. And within that year that we started praying, my brother quit smoking, he quit drinking, and he quit doing any kind of recreational drugs, and he even quit dealing drugs. And you know, that is a testimony, I believe, of the goodness of God, and that I didn't say anything. This is the first time in our whole lives where I didn't say anything to him. I didn't say, you know, "Kyle, you need to do this, or you need to do that, or you need to go to school," but that we just prayed. And for me, if you have certain things in your life that are like just a hallmark, just a benchmark for what truly changed and transformed you, it would be this for me, because I didn't have to do anything. I just trusted God. I prayed, and he came through, and he met Kyle.
So that's awesome. And you know, what's kind of the best advice? You already gave some of it, but what's some of the best advice that, you know, you can give people who are in that situation, you know, who maybe have been loving someone, enabling them, even just what can they do?
I think the first thing that I had to do is that I had to see Kyle free of addiction, and I had to see him the way that God sees him, which is pure, and which is a wonderful son. And it was hard. It's hard to separate the things that make people head down the wrong path. It's hard to separate that from who they are. But in order to really start seeing Kyle as a drug-free, a man that's walking down the right path in life, in order to see him like that, I had to remove all the things he did from who he was. And when I started to do that, it was like freedom, because I didn't put judgment on him. I didn't put this is right and this is wrong, but I just put into him, this is who I know you are going to be.
Yeah, that's important. Speak into their life.
Speak into their life.
Who you see them, who they've been called to be. Because even, you know, we were talking about that a little bit last night, but you can look at all the situations and how bad it is, but if you focus on that, that's most likely what you'll have. But if you focus on, no, this is who they are, this is the love that they can have. And you even mentioned to me kind of about Kyle, like, because everyone thinks he's so nice now, and you're like, but that's not who he was. How was that like?
Well, one of my best friends in college, she went home with me during the peak of his drug addiction, and she says to me, "Gosh, he seems so hard, but when you have a spirit that's just dialed into what God's doing, you can see beyond that into people and to see their true heart. And she'd say he's kind of like a teddy bear. And that was the first time anyone in years and years had ever said something about Kyle that was really, really warm and hearty. And it wasn't like you just saw the addiction and the years of bitterness. But for me, all I saw in him, you know, for years and years was just that angry Kyle. And I knew that wasn't him, but I always laugh because people were like, he's the nicest guy ever. And I'm like, he is. He truly is. It's genuine. It's his heart. That's who God made him to be. But if you knew him 5 years ago, he was angry and he'd swear at you and he'd tell you to leave him alone and you don't know anything and quit judging him. And now that he's just been radically changed, he's set free. It's almost as like who he really was is now able to come out.
That's awesome, and we love hearing about Kyle's life and how he's been redeemed in that, and even just you guys being so vulnerable and sharing his story, and thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
And also, you know, we were also talking just even from the medical perspective of addiction, there's all kinds of ways you can have addiction, but what's some of that as a medical professional? Vanessa's a nurse, and what's sort of your experience with that?
Well, I mean, we all know like addiction is something that isn't just you try to will your way out of it. You can't try to say, I'm going to stop smoking. I'm going to stop drinking. I'm going to stop doing drugs. It's not something that and you know, some people, they've had, you know, luck doing that. And I'll say the majority of the medical community and even people in general would believe that to break addiction, you need the grace of God. And you medically in your body, what needs to happen to be broken is something that can't be done just by sheer willpower. And so I believe the combination of God moving in people's life and also even people going into rehabilitation programs and getting into things that are going to help them even physiologically get past those barriers. I remember praying for Kyle. He'd stopped drinking. And I said, and I prayed, I really prayed this. I said, God, if he goes back to drinking, I pray that you would make him sick. He wouldn't be able to tolerate it. He just felt gross. And I remember he calls me in the middle, like late, I think maybe 12, 1 in the morning. And he says, Vanessa, I feel terrible. I feel like my insides are just aching. And I was like, Kyle, you know, like, what were you doing? And he's like, well, I was like, were you drinking? Because I just was, you know, I was like, Lord, you changed him, and I don't want to see him go back to that other way. And so he calls me, and he's like, I am sicker than a dog. And I said, Kyle, you've been drinking, and God's not going to let you do that anymore. God wants to protect you. Like, his body physically changed to no longer crave it, but to repel it and to be disgusted by it.
Awesome.
And he's same thing. If he smells a cigarette, he's just like, ugh, I don't even know how I ever did that.
Yeah. That's powerful, you know, how we can pray and God can change even the chemical stuff within them that's desiring it. And, you know, even as you mentioned earlier when I was talking to you, sort of that it's important that people know that it's not just something they can do by willpower, like, okay, I'll change, like, you know, something like changing your outfit or like going to the mall. It's not like that kind of decision. It's actually a decision that because of their actions, it's something that's been produced in them. And sometimes it can even be something that's in their DNA or chemically more likely
hereditary
chance to have a problem with that if they mess with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you see like hereditary things that are carried on from families to families to families. Like I didn't know a lot of things about my dad growing up, and later when I got to know him, I had so many tendencies that were like his, so many dispositions, so many, you know, like even my behaviors and my mannerisms, a lot were like him. And it is funny how much we can resemble our parents. And see, Kyle didn't know his dad, but I know his dad had some substance abuse problems, and those kind of things. If you don't know that predisposition, it's like you're walking into a minefield and you don't even know it. But as soon as addiction comes near you, you will grab hold of that. And I truly believe God can remove that curse from your life, that addiction from your life. God has the ability to change the DNA of your body to no longer crave things that you have in your life and in generations. And I believe for Kyle in his future and his family is that this isn't going to be an issue anymore.
That's right. And you know, even I'm reminded too that my cousin, like as she was going through rehabilitation and stuff, they told her, they said, you will always be a recovering drug addict. You know, just like if you were an alcoholic, you'll always be a recovering alcoholic. But what she thought was powerful is that actually with the cross, with God's help, that actually you can be restored, that
good.
you can now not just be recovering, but you can be set free of.
That's good.
And I thought, that's something powerful. Kyle, I know Kyle, he's a friend of mine, and he's set free from those
Amen.
things. He doesn't allow those things to hold him. And kind of just touch on a little bit, like you had mentioned too, just kind of the rejection of not having a father for Kyle, and sort of how that played into it, and him just trying to fill that void of love in his life.
Yeah, I think, as much as our mom was amazing, but she couldn't take the place of a father. She couldn't replace a dad. And Kyle felt that void. And at first he was just trying to be successful, and that's what I did. I just tried to be successful in that I would be able to impress somebody, and somebody would love me for that. But Kyle tried that, and it didn't work as easily for him. And there was different things, and it's honestly one friendship choice away from the wrong crowd and a bad decision. And he made that choice, and I remember, that every time it would be a girl, or it'd be drugs, or it'd be something, Kyle really was broken. His heart was broken, and he longed to know a love of a father.
Yeah.
Like he will tell you that if you're talking to him, he'll say, I didn't know what it would be like to be accepted by my dad. He never met his dad. He doesn't have a relationship with him right now. And I know that in his heart, that was always a void. And he chose to fill it with drugs. And you don't have to fill it with just drugs. I chose to fill void like that with success, and with striving and achievements, and money and different things like that. You can choose to fill those things. Addiction tends to be a very common one because it kind of numbs you a little bit. And so Kyle would talk about now that he's walking with God, and he's free from that. Just even he's a father as well, and how it is to be a father to someone for the first time, even though he never had that example. It's incredible.
Yeah, and it's powerful too, because Kyle really is a great father. He really cares about that little girl. She's 3, right?
Yeah.
And he really cares so much about her. So it's powerful even to see someone who didn't have an example, didn't have a model, but how he's allowed even, he mentions a lot on that testimony about how, that story he told of how God became his father, and how he, decided, to lead him, to show him, God, I don't know how to be a father. God, I don't know how to do this. And, even how that, God began to teach him things, how to do things that he never experienced before. I think that's really powerful that God can do that. And, it's, I know for you as a sister, to even be sitting here today talking about your brother who you prayed for so long and believe for, like, I know that has to be powerful in itself, that you finally see him walking in something you stood for so long.
It is. It's like when you have someone that you love so much, and you can hear my testimony, you can hear my brother's testimony, but I want you to put yourself in the place of that loved one that and maybe this story isn't like this yet, but when you see that one person that you love choosing all these wrong choices, and what's on the inside of them, God is so good, and he's so faithful.
Yeah,
and when I think about it, when I remember it, it truly is like a miracle for our family. It's a miracle that he's not doing drugs anymore, and he's walking in the love of God for his life. And when you see those miracles, you think, God can do anything, because if he could change my brother, if he could change one of the most furthest from the right path, he can change anybody. And so I can believe for anybody. I believe and I pray for people that have loved ones with addiction, and I believe and I totally am convinced that there's no hard case that God can't break.
That's the truth. And Vanessa, thank you for sharing all that, and your brother and your life and your family's life. And even as you just said, there isn't any addiction that God can't fix.
Right.
Your situation, no matter what it is, your loved one, whether it's something known or unknown, your situation isn't something that God can't fix. He can fix it, and he can make it happen. And all it doesn't take us to know the right answers.
Right.
Who would he be, if God just had to have us have all the right things in place before we could get there. But in your own situation, in your, whatever you're feeling, the void, or you don't know the answer, or you're overwhelmed with problems, you don't have to figure it out first. All you have to say is, God, here's everything. Take all these issues, and here's my life. I don't know what I have to offer, but Lord, show me what I should do. And he'll open up those doors for you. He'll show you what you're supposed to do. And You know, and that's what the amazing part about God
That's
is.
good.
Who would God be if he couldn't, you know, if a human could mess up his plan?
That's right.
And he has created you to do something way bigger than yourself, to have a personal relationship with him, to be able to even begin to affect the people around you. And God is so much bigger than this is what you are and now you're labeled this. So anyway, thank you for joining us today on Global Call. We've had a great time with Vanessa and Kyle, and we're excited to see you here again next week. Have a great day.